Well, hey there everyone, it's Kris from Rate the Record Podcast, and it's that time of the week again for another batch of singles review, my edition. Savannah has her own, of course, so you can go check that out if you haven't seen it yet. Each week we review our own individual batch of singles, just like the title of the show says, so let's get it started. So to kick things off this week, I have Boris with Beyond Good and Evil. So Japanese noise, psychedelic, drone, metal, rock band, whatever you want to call them, Boris are back, and they just dropped a brand new album this past Friday, and one of the singles to come off of that album was Beyond Good and Evil, and it actually dropped just 5 days prior to the album, so let's take a look at it. This track, not what I was expecting, but not bad. So the song starts out actually really peacefully and quietly, and it actually kind of feels like a lullaby before too long. You have these soft, distant hits of cymbals and snares, and I mean like quiet and distant, and then it's matched with these kind of strummed, slow, wrung-out guitar riffs, very muffled too, that just kind of adds to the dreamlike quality. These whispering lyrics kind of come in, and it just feels like it's like right there in your ear. Certain people might not like that so much, but I mean, it does add, again, that interesting quality to it, of like dreamlike things. Now, maybe it's because I don't understand the lyrics, as I clearly don't speak Japanese, but I was always waiting for like a sudden heavy drop. It is quite peaceful though, that is until you get to the middle. Once we actually reach the middle portion, these slow, really noisy guitars kind of burst in out of nowhere, but it's not as like heavy or as loud as you might think though. As I said, it's noisy, it's slightly messy too, but there's actually some beauty to be found in this sound. It's pretty in a weird way. The vocals change up a little bit, you get this slight harmonization in them. There's not really a lot of intensity suddenly being added to it, but it goes from like a whispering tone to a normal talking tone, and it feels really fitting. As time rolls on, you kind of become accustomed to these like loud, noisy guitars, kind of allowing you to drift in kind of like a noisy, weird, psychedelic way. But then they're kind of just cut off. It gets back to a quieter portion where you had the vocals being whispered to you again very briefly. Then the rest of the track, these guitars and just slight percussive hits sound like they're being played through a distant amplifier. So it's a really kind of a unsettling ending. I don't know if this album is one big encompassing story. I don't know if this song is a part of a bigger message, but it's just interesting the way it cuts off like that and the way it sounds. So overall, this song was actually really peaceful in an unconventional way. I started liking it more and more each time I would listen to the track, because I listened to it a handful of times. And so I'm actually definitely looking forward to what the rest of this album holds. I'm going to have to listen to it real soon. Maybe you should too. So next up on the list, with their most recent album, Sunset Motel, dropping this past Friday, just like Boris's W, I am taking a look at El Camino Acid and their single for Chang the Banker. It's an album of relatively short tracks, and it just so happens that this single is the shortest track on the album, 1 minute and 45 seconds. I didn't do that on purpose, but that's just the way it kind of happened. So you have a song that has garage rock and like indie pop meet surf rock type feel to it, and it sounds like something that you would honestly hear out of like a Tony Hawk game from the PlayStation 1 from like the 90s or early 2000s. You might even hear this on like one of the radio stations in Grand Theft Auto. I wouldn't be surprised if a song like this ended up in Grand Theft Auto 6. You have these crunchy and spacious guitars that kind of really fill out the soundscape on this one. The drums are really punchy. The bass is kind of quiet, but you know what? It's there and appreciated. You can definitely still hear it. Everything just works so well in what feels like a very small indie production. The vocals come in, they're slightly echoed, definitely reverberated, and it's actually kind of nice to have that because it makes it feel like the vocals are more of an instrument rather than trying to stand out too hard on its own, and in a song like this, it actually works out really well. The choruses in this song are a lot of fun. An array of vocal harmonies a la like 50s styles rock, like even Beach Boys to a lesser extent, but it adds a lot of fun and charm to the track, so I really like the ooh la la's or ooh wah wah or whatever it was in the background. I can't remember off the top of my head. It was a lot of fun. Towards the end of the track, you have this like simplistic guitar solo kick in. Yeah, not a whole lot going on with it, but it does match the mood. And then it's just all abruptly stopped, like very quickly, as if like the dream was suddenly over. I will say though, it is a fun track to get into, especially if you're just looking for a quick fix, so definitely check this one out. And finally, for my singles review of the day, it's been 5 years since we've gotten a new album from Canadian hardcore punk band Comeback Kid, and like the other two bands on this list, they also released an album this past Friday called Heavy Steps. The difference between this track and the other ones, though, that I've already covered is that this one came out in October instead of way more recently, and it also happens to be the title track, so you know what, might as well just look into it, because there's also a music video for it too, you should check it out. A really snarling bass line and hard punching drums kind of start everything off in this one. It's eventually covered in a thick layer of guitar feedback, like you're getting into something intense by getting into this one. It doesn't take long for the screaming to kick in for the verses and everything like that, and this is interesting to me considering that's, you know, for a band that's been active since 2002, the lead singer of this band, Screaming, Andrew Neufeld, his screaming is on point for this one, so hey, even after all this time, it still sounds pretty good. So when it comes to the hardcore days of, like, you know, the late 2000s, the early 2010s and things like that, this song doesn't come off as, like, crazy or chaotic as some of the music that you'd hear back then from bands who actually pioneered the genre. So for what the track lacks in that, it actually makes up for in a very well-polished sound, and it's very digestible in its composition and just sound structure altogether. The chorus is great, the hook kicks ass, just a lot of smart writing in this song, both like lyrically and composition-wise as well. Still holding heavy and living up to that hardcore and hard rock sound, but yet still bringing a lot of energy and excitement to a potential new audience. And if a band such as Comeback Kid can be around for 20 years and still release a track this cool, then it's obviously an exception to the rule. You should try this one out for size. I think it's a lot of fun. I think you're going to like it, so go ahead and give it a listen. And those are my singles review of the week, of the day, of the whatever. So let me know what you thought of these tracks down below in the comments. And also don't forget to check out Savannah's pick for her singles. And we'll be back next Tuesday with more, but don't forget to check out the podcast as well. Every Monday we have a brand new episode. So until then, take care, friends.